Gazette has won the Pulitzer Prize in national reporting for
This is John Troyer for the Colorado Springs Gazette. On Monday, April 14th, 2014, the Gazette won its second Pulitzer Prize in its 142-year history for Other Than Honorable, a three-part series that ran in May of 2013. The series, written by investigative reporter Dave Phillips with accompanying photos and videos by Michael Ciaglo, focused on military combat veterans who had been sloughed off by the Department of Defense and denied health care benefits. Though Phillips was in Washington, D.C. when news broke of the award, he flew home Monday evening to a hero's reception at the Gazette office and a late-night celebration at a nearby brewery.
Cheers to Dave, cheers to Michael, cheers to Joanna, cheers to all of you.
Chris.
Cheers to Chris. Cheers to everyone. Congratulations on Pulitzer 2014.
Phillips, Ciaglo, and managing editor Joanna Bean were the driving force behind the series, along with Gazette web designer Chris Hickerson, who helped put together an extensive online format for all three stories.
I got this call essentially saying, hey, there's this soldier from Fort Carson who was in the psychiatric hospital here in town, and the Army pulled him out against his will and put him in jail. And so I thought, like, wow, can they do that? That seems like a really bad idea. And I went to visit him, and he told me his story, essentially that he had had 2 tours, that he had been diagnosed with PTSD and other things, and that the Army had sort of always ignored things and medicated them and sent him back out on the line until he finally snapped. So, I mean, that was a really interesting issue. When these guys who are damaged snap, is that a crime or is that an injury, and how do you deal with it either way? And so I knew I had something. And then I left because my time was up at the jail, and I knew I was going to go back and see this soldier a few days later to interview him some more. And when I went back, he was gone, just gone. The Army had given him this piece of paper where you sign it, and once you sign it, you're out. They won't charge you, but you don't get any benefits, and you leave. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, isn't this exactly the type of guy who really needs benefits, who needs them the most, and now he can't get them? How is that going to work a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And so he was gone. But I started looking around and asking people, well, how often does this happen? And what we found is that it was happening regularly, and it was happening not just at Fort Carson, but all over the place.
They all came to know and trust you, and that to me is remarkable, because the stories wouldn't have been what they were. I don't know what the magic was.
The hardest thing was these guys, by definition, who we were covering were guys who had had brain injuries, and so their memories were scrambled. Like, a lot of times they would remember things, but in completely the wrong order. It was just that, part of the nature of the injury. One of the guys, Gerald Jensen, a sergeant who had this injury where a piece of a bomb went right through his face. He's still I have no idea whether he'll call me whenever I call him. Even though we have this really close relationship, and that made things difficult because you had to deal with that, but then also you had to go to extra lengths to verify everything because everybody's memory was suspect. Even if you could trust them, you couldn't trust their biology essentially.
So the first time I hung out with Cash, who is one of our wounded veterans, started off the series. One of the first times I went and hung out with him alone, we were just going to go, it was myself and a veterans advocate. We were just going to go to a routine doctor's appointment where he was going to try and get some seizure medication that he had been lacking because the VA wouldn't give it to him because he didn't have benefits. And we arrive at this primary care doctor, and he gets up to the front desk and almost collapses. And he got put into a wheelchair, wheeled back. The ambulance was called. The fire department came to assess him. He's back in this doctor's office, and they're opening his shirt, strapping EEG stuff to him. I ended up talking my way into the ambulance and actually going with Cash to the ER and watching them, perform tests on him and, really check him out, and then just give him a couple meds and release him back into society, because there was nothing they could do for him. He didn't have insurance, so they gave him what he could and released him, and that happened to him 80 times in a year, I think he said.
Something like that. We were watching him suffer. We were watching these guys suffer, and we were doing it for the hope that by documenting it, we could make some difference. What that requires you to do is watch these guys fall apart, and there were times where I was not sure that Cash Alvaro was going to live to see the end of the story. I remember us having
Sassy was going to take his own life.
Yeah, or that Sassy, this guy was sitting in solitary confinement. Yeah, it was going to.
Or that Gerald Jensen wouldn't become so ill that.
Yeah, or he would just disappear.
Yep.
We had this conversation, Joanna and I, about what was acceptable in my behavior.
Very difficult conversation.
About what I could do to help these guys. And of course, I'm not supposed to help them at all, but as a human being, you have to help them a little. And, essentially what we decided was can I give this guy a ride to the doctor? Well, no, you can't. Can I call 911 for this guy, or perform CPR, things like that? Yes, you can. This is like we could save a life, but we couldn't help a life, which is really strange.
Or participate in
Right.
his life as it unfolded.
Right. And that was really hard for me. And I think it would have been for anyone.
The power of a story well reported and well told and well photographed and well designed and well edited and well copy edited can do amazing things, and that any newspaper can do this. Any newspaper.
I remember when I heard that, or I think I saw an email about someone in Congress taking our reporting and using that to base a bill off of. I remember calling you a little bit freaking out, because something that we had done had made it to a national level where it was actually going to change the lives of some people. And that was astounding to me. And then it happened again in the Senate. This is why you get into the industry, is to change things, and we did that.
I was stuck in an airport, and I had sort of put two and two together because somebody at the Gazette had been notified early that we had won something, but we didn't know what.
Not exactly. That we might want to be.
We might want to
watch.
And maybe have some champagne ready. Joanna had kind of said, "Hey, we need you to call into this meeting at 1:00." And I hadn't been really paying attention. And then a few hours beforehand, I was like, "Wait a minute, the Pulitzer Prizes get announced at 1:00." It had been the farthest thing from my mind. And for the next couple hours, I was just sitting there like, "Oh my gosh, what if I won? If I won, it changes everything. But you didn't win. You can't win this stuff, it's too hard. But what if I won?" For like hours, back and forth, until I was a wreck, like sweating through my shirt, just like standing there like shaking in the airport. And then my wife texts. And then I texted her back and said, "Check the website, did I win?" And she said, "It doesn't say yet." And it was like 101, 102. And then a text message popped up and it said, "Won." And then another one, national reporting. And I fell over. I couldn't believe it. And all the people in the airport are like looking at me, like, they're like messing on their phones, like looking up, and like it was crazy. And then I hurried home as fast as I could to share it with these guys.
We didn't do it to win anything at all. We did it because it was important to do. So I had forgotten that Monday was the day they were announced, and Joe, of course, we had submitted an entry, so we were then waiting to see at 1:00. And it was true, it was a couple minutes after 1, because we kept hitting refresh, looking, it's 101, it's 102, and then it popped up. And we immediately tried to get Dave in on Skype and gathered a newsroom, and Michael was here, and it's a lot of cheering.
Yeah.